Hello everyone, I'm Black Marvin. I'm a progressive psychedelic trance artist. I'm a professional sound designer and I'm also a teacher for electronic music production. Today I'm excited because I'm going to show you a technique that I use while creating presets for the bank Carta that I did for Kilohearts. I was looking for a way to describe this technique and I came up with cycle synthesis. Although the approach is similar to granular synthesis, it's really not the same thing, and granular synthesis kind of implies that there's grains involved, and it's not the case with the cycle synthesis. The idea with this technique is to have multiple layers of cycles. These cycles are expanding, collapsing, moving. They are not fixed, they are morphing through time. So that really adds depth and movement to the sound. And you bring all these layers together in a very creative and complex soundscape. Also, this is going to be a long video. I'm going to show all the steps, including the creation of sources. And keep in mind that the criteria for a good cycle synthesis source and granular synthesis source are very similar. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone by learning on this, because now you can create some quality sources for both these style of synthesis. Just before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. I have a part 2 coming for this video because I had to split this one into parts because it's too chunky. And I also have a lot of Kilohearts content coming up on the channel. So if you don't want to miss this, stay tuned. And now let's do some cycle synthesis. All right, I am inside Faceplant, and the first step for quality cycle synthesis is to have quality sources. You're looking for good textures and things that have a lot of good variations of a similar thing. This will get easier to understand as we go. I thought that instead of using sources that already exist, we could make our own for this tutorial. So the first thing I'm going to use is I'm going to do crossover of two of my passions. We're going to take this fishing lure here that I have. That's what it looks like. The reasons I'm going to use this is that, well, there's beads inside it, so it makes a specific noises, and it's also like jointed. And so I guess this is like hard plastic, but the beads plus the plastic clanking will make very good texture sources for our cycle synthesis patch. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to record a couple of just movement of this guy here. All right, I think I got a couple of nice snaps. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to tighten this a little bit. Like there's a lot of like not so useful spaces in between. So I'm kind of going to keep all the nice textures. So let's do this. First, this is tightened up. I'm going to save that. There's more processing we need to do that because right now it's quite harsh. There's even there's a noise floor, there's a hum. We need to clean that up. First thing I'm going to apply is some voice denoise from Izotope RX. I actually prefer this one from the spectral denoise. Works very well for this. So we want to get rid of the ambient noise. Now the signal is cleaner. Next up, I'm going to use the mouth declick from Izotope RX. Although it's not a mouth click, there's a lot of clicks that are just too intense to be able to be used creatively in sound design. Well, it just makes things harder. So we're going to clean that up with the mouth declick. Also, maybe you heard, but there's a moment where I hit literally the mic and it resonates. It creates some sort of bang. I deliberately left that there because it can be useful for that kind of sources. Next is smooth operator. Again, we're still like hunting just to reduce the harshness of this source. Now we're good with smooth operator. Now we're going to take care of the dynamics. This is multipass, but we are still I'm just stacking up effects on that source, or I'm gonna put some dynamics here, and I just really want to put a nice ceiling here because there are some moments where there's some crazy spikes. I want to get rid of that. I want this to be controlled. Now the dynamics are taken care of. You can also see that I added the limiter to just get rid of some like heavy peaks. Also used, I worked on the ceiling here, but also worked on the floor. So I kind of reduced the noise floor and the behavior of the low signal, not low in terms of low frequency, but low volume. And now the dynamics are much better for what we're trying to do. Now it's time for the geeky part. I'm gonna get true iron because it's soft saturation. I'm gonna put the string all the way up. I'm gonna remove 2 dBs out. And I'm also gonna stack one of my favorite preamps on that, and then we're gonna be good to go. And that's one of my favorite preamp here, the Choral in stereo mode. It's a Choral 2 preamp. Now the result sounds like this. It's still quite harsh and intense, but these kind of sources are really meant for texture, and you'll see it will all take shape inside Faceplant and inside the cycle synthesis. Now there's one other source type that I want to do for our preset. This one is going to be tonal. Now we're gonna do a creepy whistle. I'm not necessarily a good whistler, but I think that's gonna contribute to the creepiness of all this. But we're gonna tweak this one a lot. But first, we need some basic source, and I'm gonna whistle into the mic. All right, I think this is going to be perfectly creepy. But first, again, we're gonna tighten up the loop a bit. So that's the result. It's still noisy. There's a bit of wind in there. We're going to do similar process. We're going to clean that up. But also we're going to put some creative processing. And I will need to choose because at this point, there's like many directions we can take. But I'm going to demonstrate one of them. So what I just did, I literally dragged and dropped the whistling source on the chain that I add for the fishing lure. Let's just see how this works. Maybe I guess the smooth operator will probably be too much and the multipass, but the voice denoise, the mildly click, they're still going to be there. So let's try this. For this one, I'm going to do more high pass. I want to clean up the windy feeling a bit. Now a bit of smooth operator. I took the arch vocal preset. Now that this is clean, I'm going to save it as the basic source because we're going to branch off in another direction, that more creative and freaky direction for this one. But I still want to have this like bass one that is bass clean one. Now I loaded this bass sample here. I just retightened it up a bit. And we're going to start to apply some creative effects. I'm going to use Manipulator here from Polyverse, and we're going to apply some dirt and freakiness on the vocal. Well, the whistling vocal. That's going to be one version of it. And I put RX voice denoise also after that because the manipulator kind of, since there's noise inside the recording, it kind of re-brings that up a bit. So I'm going to have a cleaner version after that. So this is going to be our first sub version of it. And we're going to create at least one more. For the next one, I'm going to go into a more tonal direction and I'm going to use a Newtone inside FL Studio to auto-tune it into one note only. So this is how it loads up and that tracks. That makes sense. I'm gonna center this and I'm gonna reduce also the, well, we'll see about the variation actually. But one very important thing, I'm just gonna align that into, I'm gonna pick one note and this is going to be aligned to that note. So that's the result. So that little dirt here on the whistle, that those almost those grains, maybe we can make them pop into some kind of a sparkling thing inside our preset. We'll see. So now we have enough sources and we can start laying down some layers for this preset. Now let's start with the whistle. I'm gonna get a sampler here. Gonna get the whistle source in there. I'm gonna start with the last one we worked on, and I know this is F sharp, so I'm gonna get the root in F sharp. This is how it sounds right now. Now with that, we're gonna make a cycle out of that. The difference between loop and cycle is that that cycle is going to be not fixed and morphing. It's gonna, the size is gonna change and possibly this, you know, it's gonna morph through time. So let's just pick a nice loop. Now that's really good. We have something that sustains, but at the same time morphs. Now I'm gonna just put a reverb. Just, I'm not ready to work on the effects section yet, but just with the reverb, it's gonna help me get the ball rolling in terms of abstract vibes. I'm also going to have a longer attack on that and a longer release. Yeah, now we're talking. And you can hear that the dirty aspect are not a problem really. They're more of a texture now. Now, next up is an optional thing, but we're going to go and put some unison and try to see if we can widen up that spectrum. I'm going to go here into the creative because we are creative. And we're going to try, well, these three and pick the one that widens up the spectrum in the most pleasant way. This, when it's too high, it kind of have a wind shine vibes that is not what I'm going for, although it's cool. Let's try the other ones. This is the pitch tag, and it's been used a lot in the Carta content bank. I tend to like this one. Let's see, but on 7 right now, it's too wide. It's too high. We're gonna get maybe 2. Let's try 3. You can also hear that we can do something about the range here. If we want to modulate something, we're not going to do that for this patch, but now I think you can hear that there's some really interesting potential there. All right, now we're going to put some movement in there with some filters. Keep in mind that it's going to make more sense in the big picture of this whole preset, because right now there's only one layer. We're going to have more. With the filtering and movement I'm going to add, you might feel like I'm taking out a lot of good content, but keep in mind there's going to be more layers and it's going to make more sense later. In order to do so, I'm going to get a filter here, at least one. We're going to start with one, and I'm going to apply some movement here. Going to get a random, and that random is going to have a very smooth curve and a very slow curve, and it's going to move that cutoff. I'm going to add another filter. So I'm going to do control slide. So it's duplicating this one. And what I really like about the Kilohearts ecosystem is just like it took me 1 click, well, 2 click actually, to just sweep it into high pass. But now the second filter is just routed at the same place. The routing is already all done. And now this is how it sounds. And we kind of created some sort of wide custom bandpass very easily. This is very cool. Now, actually, it could stay like this, but I want to try to put some more movement and more randomness. So that cycle that we have here, you know, that the looping that we've done, I want to see if we can move that more through time. So I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to apply that on the length here. So this is going to create a wider cycle. Sometimes it's going to cycle through, just it's going to take more of that source, and other times it's going to take less of that source. Now let's just see what's the result. If we kind of want something that is still sustained but flows differently, but we don't want too much of a, you know, some dead moments into the cycling. That's nice. I'm going to do the same thing now for the start parameter. Okay, so what I've did is the start is like this. That's the modulation. There is some variation. Sometimes it does more sound, other times there's less sound. But so far it's kind of sustained, and that's what we want. Also, I'm not so sure. I like the pitch stack. I did change a bit the parameters, the blend especially, and the spread. That's good. We're possibly going to fine tune that also when we're gonna have the big picture of the preset. All right, that's it for part 1. This is a long process, these kind of presets, that kind of synthesis, and actually to explain all the parameters and why we do that. But I think it's worth it. In part 2, we're going to add 2 more layers, and we're going to work on the effects section. And that's it for this video. In part 2, we're going to continue this preset. And like I mentioned in this video, the more we go into the preset, you will really like understand. Once you have the big picture of the presets, you can really understand why we did these things and why we split everything in layers. And you will understand much more about the cycle synthesis concept. Speaking of the big picture would be the pack I did for Kilohearts. It's called Carta, and it's 50 presets that have been done using this technique, and they are all amazing and incredible soundscapes, and it's available on the Kilohearts website. If you want to learn more about sound design, you want to become a professional sound designer eventually, don't forget to check out my community of students. We can definitely cover these topics and help you become a better sound designer. And until then, I will see you in part 2 and or another video. See you soon. Happy producing.